very much, everybody, for coming tonight and for inviting me to be here. As you might have guessed already, I'm from Blackheath, in the Blue Mountains, which is just about an hour from here. And one of the really lovely things about Blackheath is that we're more or less at the top of the mountains. And so metaphorically, we sort of have this feeling of looking down on the world from where we are. So I've just turned the world around to give you a sense of what it feels like to live in Blackheath, that we are there casting an eye on the world and trying to think about how we can help make it a better place. And I used to live in Orange, which I loved, and I left because that man over there dragged me away. Otherwise, I'd still be in Orange. But I do love Blackheath now very, very much as well. And what I've been doing over the last few years is combining a history or a background in the arts and being an artist and a sort of a new life area that came into my life, which was the environment and permaculture, and trying to see how I could utilise the artistic skills and the creative skills I learnt in my arts background to revision the future of the world. Because when you look at it, it's not looking crash hot, and it feels as though we need to do quite a few things to make it a better place. So we've been focusing very hard on that and looking at really creative ways to look at doing things differently. As I was driving here, I'm sure most of you are familiar, I certainly know Tracy would be familiar with, driving up Havana Street of an evening when those beautiful big trees now in winter are just silhouetted against the sky. And they remind me of our current social system. Because the world has grown so big, it's like a giant tree. And the trunk is enormous. There are branches going out everywhere, and then lots and lots and lots of little twigs. And we're all sort of out there on the edges of the twigs of this giant system. But twigs and branches are starting to fall off. And when you are really hard at work and busy over on this side of the tree on your little twig, working maybe, really long hours trying to stay afloat with your family, looking after everyone, it's very hard to think about what's going on in the trunk and in the core of that whole system. And I think that's what's happening to a lot of people. They're so consumed with the area they're working in that they're not actually spending a lot of time thinking about how they can impact the entire system to change it. And it's the system that is causing a lot of the problems that we feel out here at our twigs. So what we've been doing from Blackheath is really trying to move away from just being the twig to trying to think of the big tree and how that whole system works, in effect. So we think we have a prime vantage point up there to do that. So we've focused on a few different areas that we think are demonstrating issues that need to be addressed as part of the bigger system. But what we've observed is that there are problems ahead in media, in neighbourhood centres, because a lot of the neighbourhood centres we've been working with have been having much reduced funding and are struggling to deliver the services that they've been delivering in the past. Universities are experiencing a range of problems. I worked in a university for a while, and a lot of the people I know who worked in universities were starting to feel a little bit disillusioned about how much the universities were becoming money-making machines to get more and more students in and just pump people through, and perhaps lose sight of what universities could be all about. And a lot of local organisations that haven't done adequate succession planning. What I mean there is that many years ago, people set up wonderful organisations in their communities, festivals, art societies, a range of community groups. And you might notice that a lot of them, the members are getting quite old, and there aren't a lot of new, younger members coming in. And even today in the news I read that even canteens in schools around Australia aren't able to attract enough volunteers to help in the school canteen because everybody's too busy. That's not an organisation that hasn't had succession planning, but it's one of the many services that are struggling to continue at the moment. So we've been looking at those things as part of a bigger, broader system, and there aren't easy solutions. There are no easy solutions for poverty, for climate change, for biodiversity loss. These are all really, really complex problems, and they've been described as wicked problems because there are so many things that are involved in tackling those problems. If you imagine it like a giant weaving, we might be over here on this thread and we think, oh, we'll do this and it will solve climate change. But if we pull that thread, something else over this side of the weaving gets skewed and you don't realise the consequences of pulling that thread. So there are so many things that are involved in these big wicked problems that it's impossible for any one person or one group or one political view to solve it. They're really seriously complex. And so as a result of that, the research makes it very clear that you need a whole of system approach. And so our mission, so I run a charity called The Big Fix, and our mission is to change the story to grow a collaborative, solutions-focused culture. So we've identified many, many problems. We've identified that a lot of people are feeling depressed and anxious about the future, and that the media is exacerbating that, and that if people give up or feel negative, they're less inclined to feel motivated to act or less empowered to act, and people give up. And we've been noticing that happening in a lot of different areas. So first and foremost, we think the story we tell ourselves is the most important thing. When I finished art school, I did 4 years of training, and in my last week, our final lecture was how to apply for the dole. And that identified to me that arts weren't highly valued anymore in our culture. So a lot of the people I went to art school with after 4 years decided then to go into advertising and marketing because they felt at least there they could get money for what they were doing. If you look at the bigger picture of culture, the bigger system, try and take the really big view of all of this and look back through history as well, historically, many of the storytellers were the churches. They gave us the stories that helped us guide our lives. So if you think back in our culture, in our predominantly Christian Australia, as it was for many years, people would work for 5, maybe 6 days a week, and every Sunday all the shops would close. When I was young, all the shops would, it's a long time ago, all the shops would close, and people would go and meet at church face to face and talk, and they would donate money. They would often tithe, maybe even 10% of their money, donate money into the church for the greater communal good. And people would have stories told to them every Sunday about what really mattered, stories to guide them to move forward in their lives. And then they would perhaps go home and have a big family lunch and spend time with their kids and maybe garden, but spend time as a family. And it was always seen as the important day of the week. Then you would go and work again for a few days, but always you had this guiding day where the story was the most important thing in your life. Then suddenly, you know, people were declaring God is dead, open shops every Sunday, you don't need to go to church anymore, just work 7 days a week, go shopping 7 days a week. Artists, instead of being involved in the story and building cathedrals and stained glass windows and all those sorts of things, artists got employed to convince us to buy plastic water bottles. Because, you know, when they first introduced plastic water bottles when I was a teenager, everyone said, no one's going to pay for water, you can just get it out of the tap. Now, when I was teaching at university, there wasn't one student in the whole university that drank water out of a tap. Every student came with their water bottle to class all the time. They were buying water, not drinking it out of a tap. So we also had artists employed to convince us to use Glad wrap. And there were ads on television. What did we do before Glad came along? So the artists were employed in telling the story of the great forgetting. We forgot how we used to live. We forgot what we did without Glad wrap. We don't know how to look after our food if we don't have Glad wrap or Tupperware or something like that. So the whole role of artists and storytellers began to change, and they weren't central and core to our being. And what we believe is that if we're going to change the whole system, it's the storytelling that we have to concentrate on first. The stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell each other, the stories we tell our children. And if we look at who the main storytellers are now, it's the media owned by giant corporations on the whole. And I'm not sure who owns the Advocate, but in the Blue Mountains, we have the Blue Mountains Gazette, and that was recently owned by Fairfax. Then it got sold to Channel 9, and now it's been sold, the regional papers were sold to the man who used to run Domain, the real estate advertising. So we don't know what's happening to our local storytelling, but the main storytelling comes from higher up outside of our communities usually, or is owned higher up outside of our communities. And we don't always know if the stories are true or not true. Big problems with fake news, with media polarisation, all these things that happen through the story. So what we're trying to do is say, change the story, move away from despair about the future and say, let's have a huge focus on solutions to fix the problems of the world, and we can do it collaboratively because these big problems need collaboration. So what we do is research and then model solutions and share them through a various number of organisations that we're now doing. We have the Big Fix Media, the Blue Mountains Pluriversity, Edgy Blue Mountains, Blackheath Community Farm and the Blue Mountains Permaculture Institute. And so on our website, you can sort of go and find out about each of these things, but we are looking at, in communities, creating like sort of hyper-local government, where you have an alliance of community groups, organisations, education and research, business, artists and government, collaborating in their small community to converse and look at how everyone can work on solutions together. Making sure creative people are central to that collaboration. With media, we focus on solutions media and we look at the fixing news, not the breaking news. And so we do a range of things there, which I'll talk to you about. What I've given you all is one of our bio-regional magazines and a youth edition of that, and also a tiny little Blackheath local news that we've developed as part of a trial that we're doing in Blackheath. We also so what we looked at, if we want to change the whole system, what are the things at the core of system change? As I've already said to you, collaboration is one of them. To solve wicked problems, we need to increase collaboration as much as possible. We need to change the story and focus on how we can collaborate on solutions. We need to look at education. How do we educate our young people? That's how they learn the stories, through education. Who's educating our young people? How can we provide a more pluralistic, diverse education to what you get at, say, a university, which is focused on a, single line of thought or a single career path? Is that what we need for the future? Is that what's best for our young people, to have a university? So we're looking at a model of a pluriversity, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. We're also looking at business, because how do things tick over? How do we make this all work? We need business, but we're looking at social enterprises. So different business models where business can be much more collaborative with cooperatives and things like that, but also where business first and foremost is focused on social good and common good, socially and environmentally. So we're looking at different models of business. We're looking at different ways to bring community together. So we have a Blackheath community farm, and we do it at the same time a lot of people go to church, 10 o'clock on a Sunday. And so basically we say, if you don't have church in your life as that one day a week where you create community and stop work, come to the farm. We are out in nature, and we're there, and we welcome everybody to come at 10 o'clock and to work together, get to know one another. Then we have a big communal lunch, and then we all have developed connections and socialise beyond that. So first and foremost, what we're doing there is farming community in the way the church has had that role. So we believe that absolutely one day a week you should get out in nature, no matter what, and you should be with other people and connect to your community. And then we have permaculture design, because we believe that it's a great education tool for connecting people to nature and to systems thinking, to understand whole systems thinking. And permaculture helps give everyone an ecological lens on all of these other things. So that this is basically the ethics and principles we use to find the solutions and to look at how we run the rest of our system. So we think that through these areas, you can actually get right back to the trunk of the tree and revisit it. Perhaps we can't change the actual trunk of this tree, but we know when a tree gets very, very old and the branches start to fall off, it will fall. At the moment, what concerns us is that maybe the big tree is sitting there alone in a paddock. So we want to start growing lots of other nice, young, fresh trees all around it, so that if it does fall, there are plenty of other trees, and it'll just kind of fall sideways and be like at an angle. And it'll stay alive, but it'll provide enough light for all the other trees to grow up. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to plant the trees of a new, fresh system in this forest. So we don't want collapse. We just want to make sure that there's a nice, dense, healthy forest, so that if the big tree does fall, we'll grow up into that space. So it's a really positive way. We definitely don't want to knock the tree down. Too many people in that tree, and too much knowledge and too much experience in that tree. So it's an important tree, but we're looking at all these different things. So a New York Times editor predicted just recently that almost all newspapers will die in 5 years. So that's one of the reasons we're focusing very hard on news. And the big issues are media fragmentation, that there's news all over the place and nobody knows, that's very hard to reach a lot of people with news anymore. And media polarisation, where people go either really left-wing or right-wing or extremist in some form, or just their own little niche, and they don't really know what else is going on. We don't really have a common community gathering place, a commons where we all share our stories together. And I think that's always been very important in social structures, that we can connect and not all be off in different tangents. So what we've done with the news is to try to model this from Blackheath, and we've created a few different things that we do. As part of Changing the Story, for the last few years, we've been doing a daily solutions digest, where we do 7 solution stories in every sector from around the world. And we post it on our website. So if you go to the website, you can read back solutions in every area: health, community, environment, work, everything, for years. So there's thousands and thousands of stories. So if you ever feel a bit depressed, just go and read them and then you'll feel heaps better. We also do a weekly solutions digest for people who would like an email. Once a week we send an email out with solutions, 3 solutions that individuals are doing, 3 community groups, 3 organisations, 3 businesses, 3 research or education projects, and 3 things government is doing and 3 things artists are doing. So we just keep trying to say, look around you, there are wonderful things happening. Lots and lots and lots of wonderful things. They just don't reach mainstream media because editors need to make money because they're for profit. And they know that if it bleeds, it leads. So horror stories get attention and help make money. And so when people talk about balanced media, they always say, oh, we'll balance it with this view and an opposing view. Climate change is real, climate change is not real. That's not balanced media. Balanced media, you could also argue, means to look at a problem and then to also look at a solution. That's balanced. If you had a young teenage girl, would you turn to her and say, darling, I suspect you are going to see me raped and then see me and Dad have our heads chopped off by ISIS. You'll then be taken away and locked in someone's cellar for the next 2 years. If you survive that and you finally get out, sorry about that, but we're heading into mass extinction. So you probably don't have much of a future ahead of you. Would you actually say that to your child? Would anybody in all conscience tell their child that? That's what our storytellers are telling us. That's what's coming through the media all the time. If I had a child, I'd say, yes, I heard that, but did you know so many people are doing this to fix that problem, and there are people doing this and there are people doing that. That's balance if you talk to someone with true care and responsibility. And that's what we're trying to say is there's different ways of looking at what balance is. So what we've tried to do is set up a model of, without a huge amount of money, we're not one of the huge multinationals. We have almost no money and we are trying to change the world with our perspective in Blackheath. So what we've done is we've created our own news site, which is like a cross between a neighbourhood centre and the ABC. And we are, it's being sort of put through the filters of all those different community organisations I told you about, so that we're looking at the stories of what all those people are doing on the ground. What we found is if you focus on solutions, every politician wants to have their photograph taken when there's a solution. You'll see the Labor, Liberal and Green will always come and have their photo taken. So it's a way to bring people together. If you say we should be doing this or we could be doing this, people argue. But if you say we've done this, everyone wants the credit, okay? So it's a good way, a good technique to bring everyone together. We also, as well as doing lots of stories, we're using this model where we want to set up a model where the alliance that basically oversees the news and has control of what comes up and reaches the news is made up of the people who make the news, the people doing the hard work. So it's going to what we're trying to create, we've applied for funding and we're hoping we'll be able to pull this off, is that we'll go to each neighbourhood centre area and we'll set up an alliance like this that includes interagencies looking after the community sector. It includes organisations like Rotary or Lions who have people from both sides of politics involved in working on the common good, has education and research, like someone from a school, for example, a Chamber of Commerce representative because they are not-for-profit organisations representing all the businesses, ideally, and then council and community health. And what we'd like to do is in each neighbourhood centre area, employ a journalist to work with all these people and individuals in the community, people doing things, to write their stories. And then this alliance will oversee it to make sure it stays solutions focused and it stays as media for the common good. okay? And that's what we're going to trial. So we've done it in Blackheath and it's worked really, really well. We're now going to take it out further to other areas and test it beyond our smaller community. So that then we're also we've already built it, we've got a global news service, so that basically each little area, their stories will be able to reach global news. And so then we'll feed that into all mainstream media. We've partnered with the Blue Mountains Gazette and we've said to them, you know, let's work on a partnership to increase solutions media and grow our communities. So they actually reprint our stories and we share theirs as well. So we're all working together. It's not in competition. Everything's about collaboration as much as possible. So on our website, I said it's like a cross between Neighbourhood Centre and the ABC. We have every community organisation in town listed. So in Blackheath, which has a population of 4,396, we have 86 groups. We have every event listed, so you can go to every single day. So for example, on a Tuesday, we usually have 14 different things you can go to in Blackheath. So it's a very sticky community where you can get really involved in things. We've also been putting up all our businesses. So we're up to 253 businesses in Blackheath, so that we involve them in this whole story as well. And so we have news going out. And so the idea is, in the middle of every month, I send an email out to everyone and say, what's your news? They send it all to me. We prepare. This has been our little trial run. We've done this for 7 months. So this is really, really tiny. It's very hyper-local. But we put all their events in the middle of whatever anyone's doing locally in Blackheath, and then we do 1 or 2 little stories of what's happened in Blackheath in that month. And then at the end of the month, we print 1,000 of these, distribute them around town for people who aren't on the internet, and then we send this to everyone and they share it to all their networks. So suddenly news reaches nearly everyone in town and you don't have media fragmentation and media polarisation. So it's not contentious news, but it's stories to help everyone get more connected in the community, and every single issue has been paid for by someone in the community. So it hasn't cost us any money at all. So this is just a beginning. It's a tiny example of how you could start, and that could vary in each community. Now, the other thing that we've done, that we've focused on, is the pluriversity. And the pluriversity is looking at the fact that we now live in a culture where a lot of people retire around 60, 65, and because we're so much healthier, people nearly have a whole career worth left in them after they've retired. They've got a lifetime of experience and a lot of skills that they can still share. And so we're working out how we can bring young people who are struggling to get started in life and older people together. And so we did a pilot program where we taught a permaculture and social enterprise course. And the idea of that was, it stemmed from the fact that I'd done a permaculture course with a young man who was homeless. And there was no way he could do a design on a property because he was couch surfing somewhere different every night. He wasn't even staying at someone else's house long enough to do a design on their property. So that got me thinking, how could I teach permaculture in a way that could reach people who weren't affluent, who didn't have land? And so the course that I developed was one where we taught permaculture and social enterprise design. When it came to the designing of land, we did everything in groups because I was trying to encourage collaboration as part of the learning. So they designed a co-housing project in Hazelbrook, and it was a co-housing project that was already started. They'd had a couple of architects come in and they weren't happy with both the architects' designs, and so they said, would you try it with your class? They were unanimously thrilled to pieces with what the young people came up with, and they said it was way better than anything that the professionals had given them. The young people created this amazing co-housing environment that was creative and inspiring, and really re-energised the people on the project. It was quite exciting, and the young people started to think about life doesn't have to be about me just owning my own house and my own land. There can be other ways to live. The second design they did, instead of another block of land, was to design their own social enterprise. And what I got them to do was look at our area and find out what the needs were. I said to them, I don't want you, when you come up with an enterprise, to think, I love doing this. This is what I want to do. I want to do more of this. I said, I want you to look at the system, look at what's happening in the Blue Mountains and think, what is needed? Where are the needs? What can we do to contribute to solve these problems? Then what skills and interests do I have that I can bring to that to help solve that problem? So twist it. You know, in permaculture, everything is turning what you've always thought and believed upside down and doing the opposite, which is why I started with showing you the world upside down with Blackheath at the top, because that's what permaculture does. So we got these young people and they came up with 5 different enterprises. And one of them, they identified that the research in the Blue Mountains showed that such a big population of older people who aren't managing their gardens, and they're overgrown, and it actually is a major fire risk for the Blue Mountains. And so these are older people, many of whom are quite lonely and just not managing their big properties. And the young people said, we'd love to help, but we want to do more than just gardening. We want to connect with those people and develop relationships with them so that they get to know us, and they have young people coming into their lives, and we do things together and all of that. And that's what they're doing at the moment. They're actually making that one happen. They also came up with safe and sober pop-up events where they would have a bus that could go in and do events everywhere, even go to a farmer's property, have young people work, help a farmer all day, and then do a concert and have food and everything in the evening. And then they also came up with other ones of building enclosures and doing various other things that people need. So a range of building and other projects. Since the course, I've given the young people 6 months of mentoring, because what I observed after most permaculture courses is that people get ecstatic when they finish, but then you get on with your life and it's really hard to maintain the relationships you had in the class and the enthusiasm and all of that. So I thought, I'm not going to do that to these young people. I'm going to keep mentoring them for 6 months so that we can make things happen. So I've pretty well got a house full of young people. And my 2 boys left home and about 10 others moved in. So it's fantastic. It's really, really wonderful. And they're very creative. And they came up with a business called Edgy Blue Mountains. And they called it Edgy because of, in the Blue Mountains, we are on an edge. We're on an edge like cliffs, but we're also what they call the peri-urban fringe between the city and the country. So we're on an edge there. And one of the things that they loved, that they learnt in permaculture, was that when you bring 2 ecosystems together, the point where they overlap is where there's the most life that happens. And so they thought, that's what we want. We want to create the most life possible to fix the world. And so to do that, they're looking at young people and older people coming together and overlapping. And how can we all work together to make the most life possible? And they're also going to start a whole media thing called the Edge Lords. The Edge Lords. So they see themselves as the Edge Lords. And we had months of debating the title Edgy because young people have very negative connotations for the term edgy. We don't realise that as older people, but young people in their sort of 19s, 20s go, oh, not edgy. They don't like, you can look it up and find out why. But we've decided to use the word edgy brazenly and go forth and teach people a different way of thinking about edgy. So I'm going to show you, fingers crossed it works, I'm going to show you a video of what we've done for the last 6 months, but then to tell you what we're doing next. So this has been a pilot program, and from now on in, from the 1st of July onwards, we're building the rest of the pluriversity. We know this has worked now, it worked brilliantly, but what we're also going to do is bring in art and culture and all sorts of things, and eventually, when we work out the logistics of it all so that it can be read on a mobile phone, we're going to, that's the tricky bit. You can do it all on a big website, but it has to work on a phone. We're going to have a range of options for young people. So we're going to have all sorts of mentoring with really talented people. So I've put together this young man with a really top international pattern designer who can make patterns for seat covers or yacht sails or anything. So she's got really great ideas, and we're going to put them together to design other things for the world. But we've also put them together with a civil engineer and a plumber, and they're coming up with a really amazing grey water recycling system, a new product for everybody. Because if you think about it, this civil engineer was the man who fought Sydney Water to make it legal to have water tanks again. So he was the guy who spearheaded that campaign. And he said, I got water tanks in, but I now realise that's not good enough. He said, water tanks empty if there hasn't been rain, as you might notice, for a long time. And he said, but every single day we drink and we cook and we wash ourselves and wash our clothes and all those things, and there's water passing through our house. What every single household has to have is grey water recycling. And so we're partnering with the man who brought wheelie bins into Australia on a product that we'll be creating. So watch this space. So they're learning product development and business skills to do that. So a lot of really exciting things have come out of the 6 months of mentoring. But when we go forward, we're also going to have so mentoring with people like that, mentoring opportunities, like with pattern makers, civil engineers, artists, filmmakers, people who do light shows, all those opportunities. Then we're going to have a huge list of work experience opportunities. Nearly everyone does work experience in year 10, but people probably really need to do work experience when they're 21 or 22 or 23. You know, go and actually spend a couple weeks to see if this is the career they want or not, when they're ready to find out. So we're going to have a huge lot of work experience opportunities. Then we're going to have workshops and events and all sorts of other things that they can do and learn from, and forums. So it will be linking to things that everyone else is doing for young people as well, so that we work collaboratively with the whole community, but we'll use and inspire the whole community to help educate our young people so they thrive and that they're really, really excited about the future and really skilled up in many, many ways, so that you get the enthusiasm and the excitement and the creativity of the young people and the experience of the older people coming together and creating a much better world. And there are a lot of older people who also need a sense of purpose, because maybe their children left home like I did, or clearly I need a sense of purpose. And so you bring everyone together so that it's a win-win for everybody, and that you then develop this beautiful sticky community where everyone has a role to play on the big fix, on solving all these problems collaboratively. So stay tuned. As soon as we can work out how to get it onto mobile phones, you'll start to see the website and all these things begin to be revealed. But the bottom line is that it can be done for peanuts. It's in the community. It doesn't need massive infrastructure like universities. It's something you can just do. Everyone can do it, you know? We can start working together to make this happen. This didn't cost me much at all to make this happen, and it's been a fabulous year. What isn't on here is a big fundraising event we did. So I taught the young people event management and fundraising and how to connect with people in the community and ask for help and do all of that. And they put on this amazing big event in April, and they raised $9,000 in one night. And that is now employing them, 3 of them 2 days a week, to help set up the Pluriversity. Yes, but we do have, you can look up the video on our YouTube channel of the final event that we did. It was really amazing. But this is what we did after the permaculture course and sort of halfway through the mentoring, the 6 months of mentoring. So I'll see if I can get this to work.
At the end of 2018, we were part of a group of over 20 young people who took part in a pilot program for Australia's first Pluriversity. A new way of learning that's enjoyable and involves the community in sharing its skills with young people so that we can all work together to create meaningful livelihoods that meet our local needs.
We completed a groundbreaking new permaculture and social enterprise design course, followed by an ongoing 6 months of learning, mentoring and support.
Funded by the Big Fix, Blue Mountain City Council, Bendigo Bank, Sydney Water, Blackheath Rotary and the Blackheath Area Neighbourhood Centre, the program has been helping us to create a strong community of young people and has connected us to inspiring individuals and groups in the Blue Mountains and beyond.
We now genuinely feel part of a large and caring community, and we've even started teaching each other.
At the Pluriversity, we've been learning the skills we need for the future, and we've been designing the sort of work that we're motivated to be involved in. Work that meets the needs of the community in the Blue Mountains and inspires us to get up each day to help make a difference.
In a variety of outdoor classrooms, like Blackheath Community Farm, we learnt from soil specialist Robin Shannon how soil health is one of the building blocks of life and what we can do to improve it. And from visiting French artist Nicole Lamarche, we learnt to use vegetables and native plants to create healthy fabric dyes and art.
We learnt from Blackheathen Mark Liebman, one of Australia's leading water engineers, about designing water systems that can help us through drought, but that also protect our World Heritage Area.
At the Katoomba Organic Community Garden, we learnt from Linda Thomas, Community Conservation Officer at Council, how we can protect our natural biodiversity by managing and reducing the impact of weeds on the bushland.
The inspirational Dr. Andrew Bollum, out near Bathurst, helped us fall in love with forests and showed us how he's transforming old sheep and cattle paddocks into rainforest.
From John Cook, we learnt about building straw bale houses and the Moroccan art of tattleact or burnishing lime plaster.
From Manu at Littleton Stores, we learnt about design, plants and worm farms. And from the Mid-Mountain Seed Savers, we learnt about the importance of collecting and sharing locally acclimatized seeds.
From Halen at the Blue Mountains Food Co-op, we were introduced to running a cooperative business that provides healthy community-based alternatives.
Costa from the ABC inspired us to believe in the future and to never give up. He set out to be motivational, and he was. His presentation was exciting and demonstrated to us how to communicate and bring people along with us on our journey.
Ro Morrow from the Blue Mountains Permaculture Institute taught us the importance of circulating money in local communities and how where we invest and use our money can change the world.
And Callum Champagne from Green Connect in Port Kembla showed us how a small group of young people like us were able to start a social enterprise that now provides the community with urban grown food boxes and employs and trains other young people and refugees.
From Lis Bastian at the Big Fix, we've learnt practical skills for setting up a social enterprise, like business skills, design and marketing, sourcing money from grants, sponsorship and fundraising, event management, the importance of community and collaboration, and how we can change the story to create a path into the future that we can be proud of.
We've designed a co-housing project in Hazelbrook, and we've brainstormed exhibition ideas to put a proposal into the Blue Mountains Cultural Centre.
We're contributing to a segment of Radio Blue Mountains called Green Thumbs, and we were assisting in the writing, editing, and production of solutions media for The Big Fix.
We were blown away by the power of working together when we transformed a backyard of grass into a thriving, food-producing ecosystem for Blue Mountains Food Services in Lawson. In our 4-hour Permablitz, we created a pond, herb spiral, compost bays, and veggie gardens. We received donations from Thompson's Landscaping and Oasis Horticulture, but we also relied on our own ingenuity as we scoured surrounding streets to find the discarded materials we needed to create a productive and beautiful system.
We've since permablitzed a garden for Naughty Studios in Hazelbrook, which we transformed from a lawn into a productive native edible garden. In keeping with the nautical theme of this inspiring co-working space that's connecting young artists and designers, we sourced an old boat, which we've transformed into a garden bed. Naughty has become our trial bed for growing edible native gardens, which we hope to roll out to more sites in the Blue Mountains.
One of the enterprises we've designed involved providing the gardening design and support needed by many of the older or time-poor members of our community. In response to many requests, we've begun garden maintenance and design of productive food systems. But it's more than just gardening. It's about connecting and growing a supportive community for everyone as we build thriving land-based and social ecosystems.
Over the coming months, we'll begin to build garden enclosures, wicking beds, and grey water recycling systems. We'll also share locally grown seeds, plants, and art at market stalls around the mountains.
We've been trained in youth mental health first aid, and we're keen to find ways to support other young people in our community, including being mentored to teach the Youth Permaculture and Social Enterprise Design course ourselves.
One of the most important things we've learned is the ecological principle of the edge effect.
Whether it's in landscapes or social systems, most life and creativity exists at the point where two ecosystems overlap. There are more plants growing where a forest meets a field, and the most exciting art happens in fringe festivals, where high art and community art, traditional and modern art, overlap.
We've never learned as much as we're learning now, from the exciting connection that's happening between us and the more experienced community members who've stepped up to inspire and help us. We're focused on increasing the number of those edge connection points, and we want to keep growing in the gap that's traditionally separated us all.
We are Edgy Blue Mountains, and we're here to make a difference.
Gardening is just the start.
So there's been lots happened since then, and just to let you know that some of those young people, one had post-traumatic stress after being raped overseas. There were young people with mental health problems. There were young people just before they came into the course who just couldn't get away from the computer. They were just sitting on their computer all day. One guy in particular who was just seeing a psychiatrist and just always on the computer, now works for the Big Fix 2 days a week. He spent all day today gardening on one of those women's properties. He got work at Scenic World in hospitality, and after being the auctioneer at our fundraising event, he was asked to audition for the Blackheath Theatre Company play, and he's got one of the lead roles. So his life now is so rich. He came in just as I was leaving this afternoon. We left him there with piles of cake and stuff, and he was nearly falling over. He was so exhausted and he was eating the cake with muddy hands, and he said, "But it feels good, it feels good." And he and Will had spent all day gardening, and they both came in and they said, "We're just so exhausted because we worked physically hard all day, but we argued philosophy all day and our heads hurt as well." But they are to have watched what's happened to them from where they were at the beginning, and Will, the one who was with him, was sleeping in his car when he started the course. And he's now got accommodation, and Josh, the other one, through us, also found accommodation with an older person in the community. So bringing younger people and older people together ultimately can solve housing problems, all sorts of issues down the track. But, you know, it makes sense. And it makes sense to do it in a way that's fun and enjoyable, and that everyone can feel like they're having a ball. Our motto is, if you want to change the world, you have to throw the best party. And that's what we're trying to do. So thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.